present your military ID, your Caesars reward card, and they have a complimentary gift for veterans. Also want to remind everybody that after the show tonight, we do have a live drawing for 2 tickets to the Harrah's field level suite for Saints Cowboys on December 2nd. So stick around to the end of the program. We'll do the drawing for those 2 tickets, and hope everybody enjoys the show. All right, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Good evening. My name is Zach Ewing. I am your MC for the night and the sports betting and gaming director at The Advocate, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune. Yes, that is a real job, and that's what I do. We like to call our little branch of that bet.nola.com, and so one of the things we want to do tonight is introduce you to bet.nola.com, where you can get sports betting coverage all year long with a Louisiana twist. This is Sports Betting 101, presented by Bet.NOLA.com in conjunction with Caesars Sportsbook, Manning Sports Bar and Grill, and Harrah's New Orleans. Now, even if you spent the last 3 months inside a cave, as long as you had Wi-Fi or data or whatever, you've probably seen commercials for sportsbooks, for Caesars Sportsbook, for some of the other mobile betting options, and that's what we're here to talk about. If you've wondered what all the fuss is about, if you want to get a tutorial on how to place a bet, how to read a bet ticket, you've come to the right place. We're here to introduce you to sports betting, starting with the very basics. Now, when it comes right down to it, sports betting is pretty basic. You are betting on who's going to win. There's probably not a person in this room who has not turned to a husband or wife, brother or sister, a coworker, and said, man, there is no way the Saints don't kill them this weekend. Or, and LSU's defense is terrible, and so is Mississippi State's. This is going to be a shootout. It's going to be 55-50. Maybe you've even put $20 on the line with a friend, right? And that's what sports betting is. At its most basic level, it's a chance to put your money where your mouth is. Now, when you get into a sports book or a sports betting app, it's a little more complicated than that. There's more details. There's more bets you can make. You don't have to have someone who's willing to bet the other side. You can just bet against the house. And quite frankly, it's more fun. So that's why we put together Sports Betting 101. Over the next hour or so, we're going to go over how you place a bet, the different ways you can bet, some sports betting definitions, and how you best join the fun. We'll also have a question and answer at the end, so we invite you to hold your questions for the end. Now, with me today to help explain sports betting, discuss it in depth, are our panelists, Jeff Duncan and Rod Walker, who are sports columnists for the Times-Picayune, Jim Derry, our lead sports betting writer at bet.nola.com, Devin Jackson, he's a producer for our videos and social media accounts on NOLA.com, and Tina Gooden, who's the assistant manager of the sportsbook over at Harrah's. So we hope you'll enjoy the show. We also hope you'll continue to tune in to bet.nola.com all year long. We have 2 video shows that are going to run just about every week, 50 weeks out of the year. One of those airs Mondays. It's called Odds and Ends. It reviews the weekend betting action. The other one is called At the Book. That airs on Thursday afternoons, and it's a preview. And eventually, it is going to be At the Book. We'll air it live from Harrah's. And then also during football season on Tuesdays, we have a show called The Fantasy Roundup. And Jim Derry has his podcast called Datitude, as in Whodatitude, 3 times a week. So we're excited about it. We think it'll be a lot of fun for everybody who gets into it. Invite you to settle in, soak it up, and get ready for the crash course we like to call Sports Betting 101. Once again, please save any questions you have for the end of the program. We'll have a nice long Q&A session, so any gaps that we miss, feel free to save those questions for the end. We'll get going right after a quick message from Caesars Sportsbook.
You are, I am, we are, you are, I am, we are,
advertising people are good. I want to go download it right now. Unfortunately, we don't have togas on, or maybe fortunately we don't have togas on, but we do have these snazzy Bet.NOLA polo shirts and a Caesars polo shirt, which you can actually purchase over there. So feel free to do that after the show. I would like to continue by introducing our first panelist, and that is Devin Jackson. He's a producer for NOLA.com, social media expert, just joined our company a few months ago, but he's already doing a great job. And I will tell you, if you watch Odds and Ends or if you watch At the Book, you know the guy also knows his college football. So if you want a few tips for Saturday's games, get with Devin after the show. But for now, Devin is here to talk about the money line.
What's up, guys? Thanks for coming out to this great event. So first thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to sports betting is betting on the winner. Like Zach said, you've turned to a relative, family member, friend, and told them that there's no way that the Saints will lose a game. We'll take you through what it kind of means from a sports betting perspective. So, like I said, there are many ways to bet, but the most simplest way is to bet on who's going to win the contest. So that could be betting on the Saints to beat the Titans this weekend. Could be picking who will win the MMA fight upcoming this weekend. Could be even the college basketball games that have just started up this weekend. That type of betting is called the money line. You'll see it on Sportsbook as ML. And the odds depending on what the odds change depending on which side that you pick. The team with the minus sign next to their name is called the favorite or expected to win the game, while on the plus side, the plus sign next to the team is a team expected to lose, also known as the underdog. And some of the kind of terms we use for that, like if they're at home and they're underdogs, call them home dogs, or road dogs if they're on the road. Now, the number next to the plus or minus sign will change depending on how much of a favorite a team is in that particular game. So if both sides are 50-50 expected to win, the bet will appear with a minus 110 on both sides. That means if you win, you double your money minus the 10% cut that the house takes. That 10% cut is called the juice or vig. A minus 150 line, for instance, means you can bet $150 to win $100. Now, a plus 130 line means if you bet $100, you'd win $130. 100 is only the baseline for bets. You can obviously do more or less depending on how confident you are with the team that you're deciding to go with, and your winnings will increase or decrease in proportion with the odds. In any case, the winning bettor will always get his or her original wager back. And as the odds get higher, so do the stakes. So, for instance, you have a plus 400 bet. That means you can win $400 with a $100 wager, which is essentially the same as a 4-to-1 odds. Now, if you're betting a minus 475, that means you will have to wager $475 to win 100. So kind of in conclusion with betting on the money line, you basically, if you take a heavy favorite in a game, it's a relatively small payout, and then the opposite with you take a long shot underdog means you can win big with just a few dollars, and that's if you successfully identify the underdog. So thanks, guys, for coming out to the event again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the night.
All right, thanks, Devin. That was the money line. Just a kind of a procedural note. The screenshot you saw up there when Devin was talking is the same screen you would see if you walk over to Harrah's to the Sportsbook. You go through the tunnel, you go around to the temporary Sportsbook there. That's what you'll see. Now, there's two columns there. One of them's kind of cut off, but those are the odds you're looking for. For the rest of the night, we're going to use screenshots from the Caesars mobile app. We encourage you all to sign up for the mobile app. You can go to NOLA.com/Caesars, get a $100 free bet bonus. But just as a sort of a procedural note, you cannot yet bet on your phone. That's, I think, going to become the most popular way to do it because you can do it from home. You can do it anywhere where you have cell service, right? But right now, the Louisiana State Police is still approving things. Long story short, there's 9 parishes in Louisiana where it is not going to be legal, and so they have to set up geofencing where your phone will literally not let you bet in those parishes, but as long as most of the populous parishes, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, any of those, it's all going to be legal. It's just not there yet. But just so you know, for the rest of the night, you will see mobile app screenshots. So that's what the mobile app will look like. Before we continue, we do have sort of a special guest. Kenny Mayne, a former ESPN anchor and a Caesars ambassador, has filmed a series of cartoons to help you learn sports betting, and we're using those tonight as refreshers. After we talk, he'll give you a refresher. So here's Kenny Mayne on the money line.
Hey there, it's me, Kenny Mayne, as a cartoon again. This is for the 21 plus crowd, little kids, earmuffs. Let's talk about what's known as the money line. Clearly it has to do with money, the kind you can make. With a money line bet, you simply pick a side. The team favored has the minus sign, the underdog has a plus sign. Now the easiest way to understand those pluses and minuses is to look at a $100 bet. You don't have to bet that much. If you like underdogs, you might pick a team who is, for example, plus 400. That means if you bet 100, you'd win 400 for a total payout of 500. If you bet on the favorite at minus 170, you'd have to bet 170 to win 100 for a total payout of 270. But look, math is hard, even in cartoons. So it's a good thing your app crunches the numbers for you when you add it to your bet slip. After you win your bet, don't come looking to me for money. I'm a cartoon. This is just an instructional video. Real life is out there with the apps, with the zeros and ones and the money people, machine.
I actually asked if we could do cartoons for this show, and they said it wasn't in the budget. So I guess Kenny's got a better budget than we do, but we'll hear a little more from Cartoon Kenny later on in the show. Our next presenter may not need an introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. This is Jeff Duncan. He is a longtime sports columnist for the Times-Picayune, NOLA.com. Worked a few years for The Athletic as well. If you're a sports fan in New Orleans, you have surely read Jeff Duncan, heard him on the radio. Maybe heard too much of him. I don't know. Jeff's also written 3 books on the Saints. His latest is called Peyton and Breeze, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. And so here is the greatest presenter in history on the point spread and over-unders, Jeff Duncan.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. A great crowd. Hopefully get to mingle later. Spend a little time talking Saints, or ask Rod all the Saints questions. Or the Pelicans. Actually, ask him all the Pelicans questions. All right, I want to talk to you about a little more sophisticated betting, something called the point spread. If you get bored with the money line, you want to get a little more nuanced, we're going to talk about the point spreads. Because if you were just to bet on who would win the game, I think most sports betting would be pretty boring. It's much more fun if you get a little more sophisticated by using the point spread. For instance, everyone knew that Alabama was going to beat LSU last week. Now, it was much closer than everybody thought, but for the most part, it wasn't too hard to pick that game. And you also know probably in a couple weeks, LSU's probably going to crush UL Monroe. So the books in Vegas, everyone has kind of come up with a way to make it a little more interesting. They use what is called the point spread on a game. And I'm sure most of you that bet a lot understand what the point spread is, but for those that don't, I'm going to explain it to you right here. It's called the spread. It's the most common way to bet on many sports, especially football and basketball, the 2 main sports in the country. Here's how the spread works. If you bet on the favorite, they have to win by a certain number of points in order for you to cash your bet. If you bet on the underdog, you can cash the bet if they win the game or if they win by a certain number of points. The number of points in question is called the point spread. Just like with the money line, you'll see the favorite listed with a minus sign and the underdog with a plus side. But instead of odds, the number listed, the spread, for tonight's game, for instance, the Baltimore Ravens are 8.5-point favorites. They started out as 6.5-point favorites. It's gone all the way up to 8.5. That means if you want to bet on the Baltimore Ravens, you will literally subtract 8.5 points from whatever their final score is. If they still have a higher score, you win the bet. If not, unfortunately, you lose. The underdog will be listed with a plus sign and the spread. So the Dolphins are listed as plus 8.5. If this is your bet, you can add 8.5 points to the final score to see if you won the bet. If the teams are considered even, that means there's no spread at all. You probably heard of this. It's called a pick'em game. means either side is the same chances to win the game. Alternatively, if you don't have a strong feeling for who will win the game, but you think you know, maybe might know how the game's going to be played, what kind of style the game's going to be, if it's going to be high scoring or low scoring, you can bet on what's called an over-under. This is a bet on the total number of points or goals or runs, depending on what sport you're talking about, that are scored in that particular contest. For instance, the over-under for the Saints-Titans games this Sunday is 44.5 points. This is also, the over-under is also called the total. You might hear somebody refer to the game as what's the total on the game. So if you think the game's going to be high scoring, say 38 to 34, if you think Trevor Simeon and Taysom Hill are going to light it up and they're going to move up and down the field, you bet the over 44.5. If you predict a defensive battle, you think it's going to be a slugfest, low scoring, you take the under. Both the spread and the over-under can change throughout the week. So if you see a bet at a certain number that you really like, don't wait, because it can change like it already has on this game. Take advantage of it when you see the number you want. The odds on a spread bet or an over-under are typically close to even. What I mean by that is most commonly it's minus 110 on each side. So again, you need to bet $110 to win 100, or also known as a Benjamin. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Just as a reminder, if you're looking for a Christmas gift for that Saints fan in your life, Peyton and Breeze is available in paperback, updated epilogue. Check that out. Make Jeff some Benjamins, and yeah, you know, he needs them to cover his bets. So, and by the way, if Jeff wasn't funny enough for you, you want to know more about the point spread, we've got more Cartoon Kenny for you. So here's Kenny Mayne.
Hey there, it's me, Kenny Mayne, as a cartoon, but for adults, because we're talking betting, so yeah, not for kids. This is a very serious symposium on the betting line, the point spread, or just the spread. Call it what you want, but it's easily explained. Let's say Team A is favored to win, and the people who make the line on the game, some call them Vegas, set the point spread at 6.5. But you think Team B is either going to lose by a margin less than 6.5 or win outright, which is what people call covering. All right, Team A wins the game 20-14. Now you're sad for Team B because in real life the guys lost, no talking on the plane. But in your life, because they covered the spread, you won. You just took 6.5 points and effectively won the game 20.5-20. Weird score. Take that, Team A. You take your money. Now I'll be back as a cartoon another time.
He will, I promise. Next up to present here is the Times-Picayune's other esteemed sports columnist in New Orleans, and that's Rod Walker. Now, Rod has served as our lead New Orleans columnist since 2019. Before that, he covered the Saints. He's covered high schools here in New Orleans. And before that, he covered high schools across the state of Mississippi. If you've ever read Rod's work, you know he's got a way to make you feel some type of way, whether it's emotional or angry or sad or joyful. Just a few words, Rod can do it. Real short sentences, and he gets his point across. He's a master of making his point with brevity. To that end, here he is to talk about another type of sports betting, prop bets.
I think that was Zach's way of telling me to keep it short, so that's what I'm going to do. He also made a comment about Mississippi State's defense earlier, which I was a little offended by. He went to Missouri, by the way, so.
They don't play defense.
Okay, now that we've covered the most common types of sports bets, though, let's go a little deeper. So most sports books also offer these special bets that don't necessarily have anything to do with the final score of a game. These are called proposition bets, or more commonly, just prop bets. A prop bet is a wager on a specific outcome within a game. It could be something as simple as guessing a player's final statistics, like how many touchdowns will Odell Beckham score for the Rams this week. He signed with the Rams today, by the way, if y'all didn't know that. But or how many will Alvin Kamara have more than 75 rushing yards this week? Will Alex Bregman produce over or under 2 total bases in this game? Other prop bets can be more complicated or even cross over between sports. Like, for example, will there be a scoreless quarter in the game? Or which number will be higher, Alvin Kamara's rushing yards or the number of points the Pelicans score in the game tonight? I would probably take, I'll stay away. The Super Bowl is famous for its prop bets, and they go beyond just what happens within the game. In the Super Bowl, they have all type of weird prop bets, like the outcome of the coin toss. Is it going to be heads or tails? You can bet on that. You can bet on the length of the national anthem, which songs will be played at halftime. I mean, they just have all kind of weird proposition bets, and they're offered for almost every game. So you can just make sure you look for those, and be sure to check the odds for the prop bets, because sometimes one side may be more significant than the other side on the prop bets. And personally, prop bets for me, I remember I was in Vegas in 2019 for the Pelicans Summer League, and I'm not really a big soccer fan at all, but the Women's World Cup was going on, and you can just place just the most random bets, and they sort of keep you interested in games that maybe you're not going to normally pay attention to. So I remember betting on, like, how many goals Carly Lloyd would score in the first half or something, and it just kind of keeps you engaged when normally you maybe wouldn't be. So anyway, that's my segment, and thank you all for coming out.
Thanks, Rod. So if you saw some guy screaming at Caesar Sportsbook in Vegas over Bulgarian women's soccer in 2019, that was Rod. Not really. But prop bets are fun. Always bet the over on the national anthem prop, because they try to outdo each other. They got to hold the high note a little bit longer every year. So it just, like that total's gone from a minute 53 to a minute 57 to 2:01 to 2:03. That's always my favorite to look at as far as off the field prop bets. I just want to remind you all before we continue, we will have a question and answer at the end. Save your questions. In addition to sports betting questions, Rod or Jeff will be happy to answer questions about the Saints or the Pelicans, like what the hell is wrong with them. And so we'll try to answer those. I don't know if we have a good one. We won't have a good answer for that one, but we will ask. Before we continue tonight, though, I did want to give Caesars another opportunity for a quick message.
Do you know what doing things your way really feels like? It's never-ending options.
Everything is going my way.
In a world built just for you. A world where you're the center of it all, and everyone knows it. A world where you can play
It's gonna be a good day.
your way.
And see, earlier I wanted to download the app. Now I just want to go to Lake Tahoe. It works. It really works. We hope you're enjoying Sports Betting 101 here, presented by Bet.NOLA.com, Harrah's New Orleans, and Caesar Sportsbook. Just to recap, we have covered betting on the money line, betting on the point spread or the over-under, and prop bets. And so next up, we want to go to a type of betting called futures bets. Of course, none of us can tell the future, but our next presenter is Tina Gooden, and she is the assistant manager of the Caesar Sportsbook over in Harrah's, and she is going to tell you how you can try to tell the future. Tina?
Welcome. Get out your crystal balls, future bets. Most type of sports bets can be settled in a couple of hours, while some prop bets, like a coin toss, take a few seconds. Others can take months. That's the fun of future bets. As the name suggests, future bets takes place over a long period of time. Future bets can be very popular, and they also call questions. Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? I don't know. For instance, unusual offer plus odds when you're betting on futures. Other future bets include wagering on who's the MVP of a lead home run, which team will make the playoffs in any given sport. There are also prize bets that could be considered future, such as will Djokovic win the Grand Slam in tennis, or how many championships will teams from Los Angeles win this year. One common type of future bets in team sports are winning totals. This is a special type of over-under bet in which you guess how many wins a team will have in their seasons. For instance, the Saints win. The total this year was 9. Go Saints. This means if you bet over, you need the Saints to win 10 or more games to cash the bet. If you bet the under, the record 8 or 9, or worst cases, if the Saints go exactly 9-8, the bet is a push and the money is refunded. Good luck, Saints.
One of the crazy things you'll find about sports betting, a lot of Saints fans here, place a bet on the Bucs to win the Super Bowl and see who your loyalties lie with in January. All of a sudden, your pocket will start speaking to you. You might have other ideas in mind, or maybe it's, hey, either the Saints win or the Bucs win. I'm happy either way. That's what we call the emotional hedge. Anyway, thank you, Tina, and we might ask Tina for some long shot picks later. We're about halfway through our program. I hope everyone's learned a little bit about sports betting, and if you do need a refresher, again, we've got a Q&A at the end, and we've also got more Kenny Mayne, this time about over-unders.
Hey, it's Kenny Mayne here. A lot of you wondered what happened to me. Well, I became a cartoon. For people 21 and over, that was a disclaimer. Caesars was fine with this as long as I explained betting. All right, let's start with the simple over-under. This is all about total points scored by both teams in a game. Let's say the over-under on a game is 51. Your job is to predict whether more points will be scored, that's the over, usually shortened to an O, or whether fewer points will be scored, that would be the under, or a U. Now say in this game the final score is 25-25, a score that's never happened in an NFL game. Don't worry about history. Worry about what you're going to do with your money because you bet the under, and 50 is under 51. I'll be back another time as a cartoon figure.
All right. That's a wrap from Kenny tonight for us, but you can follow him on social media. Caesars has social media accounts. They'll be posting his videos throughout the year. For our last presentation tonight, I would like to introduce our last panelist, and that is Jim Derry. Jim Derry is a North Shore native who has worked in New Orleans sports media for more than 30 years, almost as long as I've been alive, Jim. He most recently made the questionable life decision to come work for me. He is the lead sports betting writer for bet.nola.com, and he is doing a phenomenal job. You can read his work on bet.nola.com, in the Times-Picayune with his NFL picks column every week. He picks every single NFL game every week. Try that sometime. It's very hard to do. You may have an idea on one or two games. Picking all of them is a different story. Jim also has a podcast called Datitude, as in Whodatitude, that he records 3 times a week during football season, and you can find that on all major podcasting programs. Jim, take it away.
Thanks, Zach, for leaving out the part about me growing up on the West Bank. But, so what we've learned so far tonight, right? The 3 main things. A minus means a favorite. A plus means an underdog. And you take all your winnings and buy Duncan's book. That's what we've learned so far tonight. I like that. So, but as you get more comfortable with sports betting, you will find there are many ways to enjoy the process, and sometimes come up big. And one way to do this is to combine your bets. The most popular example of this is a parlay. So this is when you take 2 separate wagers, you put them together, and if they both win, your odds increase exponentially. Well, maybe not exponentially, but they increase fairly nicely. For example, if you bet on both LSU and the Saints to cover this spread this weekend, and you're right on both counts, your bet, and this is with the point spread, your bet pays at approximately plus 320. And that means that a $100 bet gets you a $320 profit plus your original $100 back. And you can make even bigger bets if, make even more money if you want to bet money lines. Say if you wanted to take that Zach and I were both going to beat Devin this week in our picks, you could probably win like 10 grand or something like that. I don't know, but you'd have to check with Harrah's on that. The risk is increased for parlays too, of course, because if either bet loses your bet, the entire thing is kaput. You got to win both of them. So another way to combine bets is the teaser. And similar to the parlay, except you get to add points to your side of the spread. Usually it's 6 or 7 points. So if a 7-point favorite, you get to bring that down to 1. A 4-point underdog is now 10, etc. Again, you got to win both of those bets. The odds aren't as good either. So usually it's a minus 120 bet to get those extra points. And you got to win both of them to win the bet. You ready to bet now? Is everybody ready to bet? We all get it? Well, there are several ways to do it. You can walk up in person to the Sportsbook at Harrah's. You can read the odds on the board and place your bet at the kiosk at the counter. And as Zach has said, you will soon be able to bet on your mobile device in Louisiana, Download the Caesars Sportsbook app by going to NOLA.com/Caesars for a special offer that includes a $100 in free bets, and then peruse the odds. You can go on now and look at the odds on that. You just can't bet just yet. It's a user-friendly system that allows you to search by sport or by team, and it includes many different kinds of bets. You can deposit to your account from your phone and make bets anywhere it's legal, of course. And with that said, we will introduce Rob Weiss, the manager of Caesars Sportsbook here at Harrah's, and we'll let Zach ask him a few questions to let him know what the casino has planned for the future as sports betting goes mainstream. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Welcome in Rob Weiss, who is the manager of the Caesars Sportsbook over at Harrah's. Rob, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
I would just ask Rob a few questions about how things are working here at Harrah's, how he got into sports betting, and all of that. So I mentioned that my job is actually a real job, so is yours.
Right.
How do you get into being a manager of a sportsbook? How does that happen in one's life?
You know, I think it came from just a passion about sports and a background in management. So we just kind of combined the two into one place, and it's been a great ride since. I've been here for a couple of years, and it's exciting to be down here in New Orleans and finally be open and live with sports wagering in the state of Louisiana.
I got to ask you what that was like, because I know as someone who enjoys sports betting and whose job depends on it, it was agony waiting and waiting. And I mean, the law was passed a year ago, and we were still waiting until, well, Halloween was when sports betting finally started. What was that process like for you all here, and what was your day-to-day like?
You know, it was really exciting because we knew it was coming. We didn't really know when it was coming, so we were kind of constantly in a state of waiting, but also making sure that we're prepared when the state says, hey, you can go live. So it gave us the opportunity to get everything in place, build the relationships that we need to with all the different departments here at Harrah's, and allow us to kind of build a strong foundation so that once the state said we could go, and that allowed us to take a situation where, you know, opening on a NFL Sunday morning on Halloween in New Orleans isn't exactly the ideal operational situation, but with the assistance of all the different teams we have here at Harrah's, it went off without a hitch, and we constantly improved that process for our guests to give them the best experience that we could. So.
And you had the added bonus of having like the Avengers come up to place bets, and like the dodgeball team from that Ben Stiller movie, and everybody in costume. So that it was a lot of fun that day. As you move forward now, the sports book that's in the casino right now is temporary. It's in sort of, I don't know if it's called an awkward spot, but it's not as much space as you would like. What are the plans moving forward, and what's that timeline look like?
Yeah, so it's really exciting. We have a permanent sportsbook planned for 2022, and as we expand what we're doing in the temporary space, adding more kiosks, adding more terminals, I think we're adjusting those plans to make sure that we're giving the guests the best experience in this permanent sportsbook. We're going to be moving over by the poker room. And we want to give them a Las Vegas type experience. We don't want to just have it be the best experience here in the state of Louisiana. We want it to be one of the top sportsbook experiences in the country.
And if y'all have seen the renderings of what it's going to look like, it's like a wow when you walk in. I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have, like I said, we have great teams at Harrah's in place that are looking at everything that we're seeing in the temporary space and seeing how we can use that to improve the design for the permanent space.
We were talking earlier, and you had said something that I thought was interesting. And obviously, sports betting makes a casino money, casinos are in business to make money like any other business. But it's fun when customers win, and it's fun when your customers win.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that people don't realize, you know, when you have a company where you're nationwide, all the money doesn't have to come from right here in New Orleans. You know, if we were paying out all the money on the slot machines, I think it would be a little bit different. But with sports wagering, you know, typically you see about, you know, half of your customers win, half of your customers lose at any given rate. And so, you know, it's exciting for us when our customers win. You know, we want you to have a great experience, and we're here to help you place the wagers you want to. And, you know, it keeps people coming back for more. And so, you know, I always joke with people, you know, I like when my customers win and they can lose in Las Vegas or New Jersey. You know, we'll make the money there, and here we'll have a good time. So
come to New Orleans to win. I like that slogan. If only
exactly.
you could follow through all the time.
Right.
Having said that, what tips or tricks do you have for people to make their lives easy when they come to the casino to bet?
When you come to the window, have your bets ready. That's a great tip that I'll give you. If you have questions, definitely ask. You know, we're great at coaching you up on the questions that you might have. Even after a sports betting 101 situation, I constantly have customers coming to me saying like, hey, I get this, but I don't quite get that. So those are great questions to ask. Anyone on my team is always glad to assist you with understanding the wager that you want to place. I'd also recommend that if you're coming for the first time and you're not sure what you want to do, don't come Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, about an hour before college kicks off, or 11 o'clock, on Sunday morning. Those are going to be the longer wait times. It's great to come to us earlier in the day on the weekday, or just a weekday in general. We do kind of pick up from about 5 to 7 on weekdays even. But, if you come in and you have a question, you're trying to figure this out, especially if it's not too busy, grab myself, one of my team members. They're always glad to help out.
Now, I know one question a lot of us have, and you probably don't have a firm answer on it, but what have you heard on the timeline for mobile betting, when you might get approval for that and when people can bet on their phones?
I think you covered it real well earlier that, the state is trying to figure out the geofencing and working that out with how the different parishes are going to handle the situation. I've been telling people that, my rough estimate with what the state has told us for a timeline is sometime between Thanksgiving and New Year. Obviously, I think we all hope it's sooner than later, but at the same time, there are a lot of processes in place, and the state has done a great job of, getting sports wagering going. That they started in August and, have constantly been working hard to get this process put in place, and so I'm confident they'll do that with the mobile app as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. We're sitting here waiting, but they do have a lot to do. If betting went live on Halloween and you say it's between Thanksgiving and New Year's, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to us, maybe. I don't know.
That'd be perfect for the NBA slate we have that day. So.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, thanks for joining us. And go see Rob at the Sportsbook or Tina, and they'll be happy to answer your questions, anything that we don't cover today or anything you think of later.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Appreciate it.
All right. That was Rob Weiss, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the conclusion of our presentation portion of our program. We do want to open it up for questions in just a second. But I did want to take just a minute to review the shows that we have on bet.nola.com and encourage you to tune in throughout the year and really get all the information. We want to make them as interactive as possible. Send us questions. We may eventually even have a call-in system where you can call and tell us your bets. We want to start a bad beat system. We didn't have a segment on bad beats. That's a whole other thing. But if you've seen Scott Van Pelt Sports Center, sometimes things don't go your way. And it's like you made the right pick and the universe was just against you. So that's what a bad beat is, and sometimes that happens. Although for half the people, that the universe was for you, and even though you made the wrong pick, you're going to get to cash your bet. So our shows, our Odds and Ends airs Monday afternoons. The Fantasy Roundup is on Tuesday afternoons. At the Book is Thursdays, and that will be the one that will be live at Harrah's here soon enough. And then the Datitude podcast, hosted by Jim Derry, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. He's got new episodes, so check your podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, wherever else you happen to listen to your podcasts. Also want to mention, real important before we go, or before we get into the Q&A, sports betting is gambling. Just like any sort of gambling, please, 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 please be responsible with it. If you feel yourself losing too much or betting too much that you're comfortable with, you need to tone it down. It should be fun, and if it stops being fun, then you're not doing it right. You see the numbers and email addresses all over the place. You can get help. If you feel like you need help, please seek it. So that is one message we want to make crystal clear. With that said, let's open it up for a Q&A. Anybody who has questions, Emily will have a mic. She'll be walking through the crowd. Raise your hand, and any one of our panelists will be happy to answer.
I don't need a mic.
Oh.
I'm good.
No, you don't.
I don't. I came a little late. I just wanted someone to go over the money line again.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll take that one first. The money line is basically a bet on who you think will win. Plain and simple. No point spread involved. No additional numbers involved. Just who you think will win, whether it's a football game or a tennis match or an MMA fight. Now, having said that, you'll see bigger numbers on one side than the other. And the bigger number you see means the bigger favorite or underdog that team is. If it's a minus sign, that's the favorite. That means you've got to bet that that much money to win $100. We're going with a $100 baseline here. You can bet more or less than that, and the ratio will stay the same. So if it's a minus 500, that means you've got to bet $500 on that side. If they win, you win your 500 back plus 100. Now, on the flip side, if it's a plus 500, that means you only have to bet $100, and if that team should win, you win your 100 back plus 500. And so betting on the underdog, obviously a lot more reward, but that's the team that's expected to lose. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you hear bettors reference a round robin wager. Can you describe and explain what that is?
Yeah, so a round robin, and this is actually can be a point of confusion, because if you bet a round robin, what you're doing is it's similar to a parlay in that there's a series of bets that you like. Let's say you have four teams that you like: Team A, Team B, Team C, and Team D. What a round robin will do, instead of a parlay where you have to have all four of them win to cash, it's separate bets: A and B together, A and C together, A and D together, B and C together, B and D together, and C and D together. And so whatever you say, let's say you want to bet a $5 round robin, you're going to get $5 on each one of those bets. And so that can be a point of confusion, because if you bet $5, you say I want a $5 round robin, you're going to end up betting more like $50, because it's going to be all of those separate parlay bets. So that's what a round robin is. Be careful with those, because if you're betting them, you're going to be betting a lot of different bets. They are fun.
Can you do a 3-team round robin with 12 teams? Because you described a 2-team round robin. I guess I'm thinking like exactas, trifectas.
Yeah, I mean, you can do, you're talking horse racing and that. You can do a round robin with any number of teams, right? But the more teams you have and the more bets you have, the more money involved. Now, Tina, you can probably answer. You can pick and choose within your round robin and take one of those off, I think. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious if you can only couple 2 teams together in your round robin.
All right, go ahead, Rob.
2 teams.
So with a round robin, you can choose as many teams as you want, and you can make as many combinations as you want. So if you pick 12 teams, you can do 12 teams by 3. That's not a real common one, so I can't tell you how many wagers that is. Like off the top, I'm going to say it's probably at least 30 wagers. But usually for the example I would give is like if you did a 3-team round robin by 2s and 3s, you would have 4 wagers. You'd have the 3 2-team combinations and then the 3-team parlay. Real common ones would be like 8 by 5s, things of that nature. It's an advanced hedging technique that people use where, like, oh man, like every week I bet these 6-leg parlays and one of them always loses. So you'll see people do that too, like, oh, I want a 6-team round robin by 6s and 5s. So you can do any kind of combination, but like he said, all of a sudden you have a lot more wagers than you started with. So it's something that's fun to play with, whether it's on the kiosk or in the mobile app. You can set it in there and say, oh, how many different wagers does this give me? And it totals it up on your bet slip.
Yeah, I was thinking probably the app would be a great place to go in, experiment with it, put some wagers in there. Because right now it's all theoretical, so you've got the opportunity just to kind of play around and, like I said, see what some of the payouts look like.
Yeah, exactly. I recommend it to all of our customers. They can see the lines when they're at home, even though the app isn't live. They can go in there. They can play with their bets. We have customers who come in. They put their parlays on there. Say, hey, I want this prop on Russell Westbrook and Zion. If he was playing, you can put a prop in there on him too. So, it's real fun to play with it, and they know exactly what the payout is. They say, hey, if I bet this, that's going to pay out, $140.35, right? So the app is a great place to play around and learn.
Sports Betting 101, and then Rob's going to teach the 300 level course later. So, yeah.
Let's talk about a tough subject, the New Orleans Pelicans, and I couldn't imagine a rougher start to the season with a new coach. Just curious on y'all's outlook for the season. Obviously, things can't get much worse, but is this going to be a season worth competing for? We're still early into it, but just interested in y'all's professional opinion on that.
Rod, you want to handle that one?
I think when it comes to the Pelicans, I think the first thing you have to consider right now is that they are playing without two of their best players. And if you take two of your best players off of any team in the NBA, they're going to struggle. So obviously there's some people aren't happy with the Zion situation just because we were kind of clueless on, what happened and when it happened. And then his return, keeps getting pushed back. And so what we know right now is that in about 2 weeks he'll have another scan, and at that point we'll know more. We'll be clear on when he'll come back. And I think once he comes back, and Brandon Ingram should come back this weekend, either tomorrow against Brooklyn or Saturday against Memphis. So I think once those two guys come back, I think this team can be pretty good. I think Willie Green's doing a good job with them. They're playing hard. They're doing some of the things that they weren't doing last year. So they're playing well. Just a matter of getting all the pieces together. And, I don't think the season's over yet. You look at it right now, they're about 4 games out of they've only won 1 game, but this isn't a team that's going to win the Western Conference anyway, but, they just want to get that 10th spot to get into the play-in tournament. So, I mean, that's not out yet. I mean, the season, it is young when you look at it that way. And so I wouldn't write the season off just yet. Yeah, they could be like the Atlanta Braves. That's right. Right. If you're really optimistic, they could be the Atlanta Braves.
I mean, I think the other thing is it's the Pelicans. It's not just that they're missing their 2 best players. They went out and got players who fit around Zion. They went out and got 3-point shooters thinking Zion is going to take all the attention in the paint. And when he's not there, it's like a house of cards. It kind of falls apart. And so that's what's happened so far. So we'll see how quickly they can get it back.
Okay, thanks. I have a series of short questions, hopefully short answers. First is, these kind of procedural for bets. First, how early for different types of sports can you start placing bets? Obviously, you can have your long-term, what did you call them, future bets. But if you wanted to, if I wanted to bet on next week's game with the Saints, and the game hasn't happened with the Titans yet, then when can you start? When does betting open?
So for futures bets, you can bet. For instance, the World Series for next year opened up as soon as this year's World Series was over. I mean, a full year in advance. Now, that's before free agency, before trades, any of that. We don't know what that'll look like, but you can do it. As far as looking ahead a week, you're talking about what we call look-ahead lines. The NFL, Tina, you may be able to answer this better. NFL look-ahead lines are usually a full week in advance. So, yeah, you can already bet on Saints-Eagles, which is a week from Sunday. Now, those lines will change, and that's one advantage to those look-ahead lines. Right now, I think the Saints and Eagles is a pick-em. If the Saints play real well this weekend and the Eagles don't, it may end up being Saints -3 next week, or vice versa. If the Saints don't play well and the Eagles do, it may be Eagles -3. And so it is an opportunity to get some value in your bets if you have a feeling on that game. That's pretty specific to the NFL. College football you won't have until the day after the previous week's action's over. NBA and Major League Baseball and things like that, you won't have until the day before's games are over in case there's an injury. You usually only see that in the NFL.
Okay, so on the other side of that, what about closing bet time? So how, obviously for a game, if you're going to do like money line, when is it closed? When can you no longer bet in, of course, your main sports, but then, other things like, say, F1 racing, stuff like that?
You can bet right up until the event starts. And that's one thing, like on a Sunday morning, if you're in line, you got to be in line early enough if you want to bet that noon game to make sure you get to the counter. Now, that's another thing where the mobile app will come in is there's a whole other phenomenon we didn't cover called live betting. And when you look on your mobile app, you can actually bet during the game. The point spread will change, the over-under will change, the money line will change as the game is going on, and you have an opportunity to say, oh, hey, look, the Saints are off to an awful start. They're down 10-0, but they were 3-point underdogs at the beginning of the game. Now that they're down 10-0, they're 11.5-point underdogs, and I actually like them to come back in this game and keep it close. And so you can bet that live. But as far as before the game, you basically have right up until kickoff.
You can still bet. You can bet during the game during live also in football.
And I actually do a thing on Saturday nights or whenever LSU plays, I do a live blog on how the line changes with LSU. And like this past weekend, for example, it started off at Alabama -29, and as soon as LSU got the ball first, it changed to like 25 and a half. So, I mean, and it changed throughout the game. Obviously, it went in LSU's favor throughout the game and as far down. I think at one point it was, the lowest I saw was at 9.5. But it doesn't usually cut off until probably midway through the fourth quarter. I mean, so you can bet that far down there. Now, you may not be able to bet the money line that far in. That may cut off earlier in the fourth quarter. The total may, no, I've actually seen it on the app go as far into and that far. But, the total, certain bets may come off, but as far as the spread goes, that will go almost always into the fourth quarter.
Okay, and with that, kind of along those lines, for prop bets, can you, if you bet that Alvin Kamara was going to get, 90 yards, and then he gets that by halftime, do you win then and you can make your collection then, or?
That's a question for Tina or Rob. I don't know when those prop bets would cash. If they cash in the middle of the game, can you take your ticket to the counter, Tina?
No, you have to wait till the game is over.
You have to wait till the game is over.
And all bets.
Yeah, I mean, now a touchdown bet would be different, but theoretically, if the total is Alvin Kamara over or under 74.5, and he has 75, and then loses 4 yards on the next carry, right, you could end up losing that bet still. So I believe you usually have to wait till the game's over.
Yeah, just curious if you could cash out and beat the lines of people trying to collect at the end of the game if you were won in game. And last question is, if you don't want to put your money on the line, is there something kind of like where you have online poker and you can just kind of play and not bet anything just to see how you do? Is there practice sports betting anywhere, any way to practice sports betting?
I don't know about strict practice, but I will say there are games out there that are free to play. We have one on bet.nola.com called Cashin' In with Carville, where you make picks every week against James Carville. And we have prizes, but it's free to enter, so you can just play and see how you do. There's ESPN has one they call the Streak, where they have, if you go on their fantasy app, they have different picks that you can make. Sometimes it's the spread, sometimes it's a prop bet. They have different things. And so you can play around with that and sort of get a feel for it. It's not strictly the same thing, but it would be good practice, I think.
And I would say something, Bob Fortas, I used to work with at the Times-Picayune, was our longtime horse racing rider. He used to be a professor of analytics, so he was brilliant with numbers. And he was the best horse racing bettor I've ever been around, ever met. And I asked him one time how he got so good at it. He said he spent a year practicing, just like what you're talking about. He basically would bet the races at the fairgrounds, without betting the money, but write it down, chart it, and see how much he would win or lose each day. And he kept a running handle for the entire year and learned how to do it without actually having an investment. And then he kind of had his practice down, and then he started actually physically wagering. But that's a great way to, I think, kind of see and learn how much you want to bet, how much you feel comfortable betting, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and it worked for him in the horse racing world.
And if you're betting at the book and not on the app, I would highly suggest that you keep track of everything that you bet. I mean, whether it be in an Excel spreadsheet or whether you keep the tickets and chart it yourself. I mean, you certainly want to know how much you're losing, but I mean, you also can follow what kind of streaks you're going on, what worked for you, what kind of bets work for you. I mean, I just got into, we were talking about the teaser in there. I just really started betting teasers last year. I mean, I've been following gambling for quite a while now. And I never really got into the teaser aspect and how to bet a teaser, and not just that, it sounds great, I can get 6 points, but there are certain ways to bet teasers and certain reasons to bet teasers that I'd be happy to talk about after. But, so I highly suggest that if you're betting in person, you certainly keep track of what you're betting.
Yeah, it's like anything else. You want to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then keep doing what you're good at.
It's easy to do if you're in an app. You can just go in the app and see what you've been betting the last few weeks or whatever, and it keeps track. But even in an app, I'd almost do it in an Excel sheet if you know Excel, or write it down or whatever, because it's a lot different when you see what you've been betting over the past month, or maybe you start off, I was making 2-3 bets a week. Now I'm making like 7, 8 bets a week. Oh, I was winning when I was betting 2, 3 bets a week. Just certain things like that. And again, the certain types of bets that you play that you're better at, you may see that a pattern. I'm better with I'm better with parlays when I bet underdogs or whatever the case may be. But finding patterns in what works best for you, but keeping track of it long term. It's certainly in your best interest to do that.
It's similar to keeping a budget for home. Where am I spending too much money? You know what? Like if you write it down, you start to figure that out real quick, right? You say I'm going out to eat way too much. Well, it's just I'm betting way too much on college basketball because I'm losing my butt every single week. So you keep track of it.
Back to the spread. So a half a number isn't really a number. So how does that? So if you're taking the Saints -6.5, opposed to taking the Saints -6.
So the half number, which will also the term is the hook we use. If it basically determines whether you would win or lose, say 6.5 at 6 points or 7 points. So if the Saints are plus 6.5 and they lose by 6, you're a winner. But if they lose by 7, you lose. Now there are bets that don't use a half, and so you could land right on the number. If it's plus 6, they lose by exactly 6. That's a push. You would get your money back. You wouldn't win or lose anything.
So the half then gives you that, it's like a cushion to push that you would.
It's a cushion if you bet on the underdog. It's sort of a tax if you bet on the favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also with the half bet, in most cases, almost all cases, you can buy a half a point. So in other words, if you like the Saints this week and they're 2.5 point dogs right now, they're 3 was the last outlook. But let's say I go drop down to 2.5, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have bet it when it was 3. Well, you got to bet 110 to win 100. Well, for an extra 10 or 20 bucks, you might be it's minus 30 to bet them at plus 3. So you can buy that half a point most of the time if you want to.
Yeah, and then it just turns a minus 110 bet into a minus 130 bet or something to get the extra half point.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Got anybody else? In front.
All right, I'm going to ask it. Who should be the quarterback for the Saints?
I think that's, is that to me?
That is definitely a question.
Anybody who wants it, go for it.
Drew Brees, is he qualified?
He's qualified.
I think we're learning, all of us, what it's like to live without a Hall of Fame quarterback. What the other half lives like, that's what we're experiencing. Because I actually think they have solid quarterbacks. Jameis, I think, was doing well. I think Trevor Siemian's going to be fine. I think Taysom Hill could. With this team, they just need solid quarterback play. They don't need a hero. They need a game manager. Don't mess up. Let the defense take care of it because they're going to win most games with that running game and that defense.
And the receivers catching the ball.
And the receivers, yeah.
That would help.
Everybody's hating on the receivers. I'm writing a column this weekend in defense of the receivers because I feel like everybody's ganging up on them, including Rod. Rod ganged up on him last week.
We don't call him Sunshine Duncan for nothing.
Right. Mr. Optimistic here. No, but I do think the statistic that I'm going to bring up in this column is there's a lot of advanced analytics on football right now. One of the analytical numbers that is pretty glaring is the Saints quarterbacks are last in the league in catchable passes and on-target passes. And that's the polar opposite of when Drew Brees was quarterback. I mean, they were almost always in the top 3, often number 1. So I think a lot of these balls that you see that the general public, fans, media, I'll give a good example. Last week, there was a pass to Marquez Callaway in the end zone down in the corner near the Saints sideline that was just a little behind Callaway, and the DB got his hand on it and knocked it out. Drew Brees probably puts that ball another 1.5 feet out in front. It's a touchdown, but it's hard to, unless you're seeing that actually be compared in live motion, you don't see that. You just see the ball getting knocked down and maybe Marquez Callaway having his hands somewhat on the ball and it gets it incomplete. We saw a lot of those balls this past week. Kenny Stills up traffic. Well, maybe Drew Brees puts it in a better spot where Kenny Stills catches it. Drew Brees made a lot of players better. He didn't have a lot of first-round draft picks. Matter of fact, he didn't have any at receiver. I mean, Marcus Colston was a seventh-round draft pick. Lance Moore was an undrafted player. I guess what I'm getting back at is
Mike Thomas got rich.
yeah, I just think I think we're all going to see what it's like, but I do think next year they'll have somebody that's not on the roster right now at quarterback. That's my prediction.
Got time for one more question if anybody's got one. That it? All right. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. Oh, do we have one more? I'm sorry. I will tell you this.
Zach will take that.
Probably in the summertime, there will be that kind of a pick. There briefly was one. Now, this gets a little bit more hairy when we're talking about a coach, but there was an offshore sports book, which you can't bet on it in the United States, but just as a point of interest that had for LSU's next coach. And they were taking bet. Now you had to be a resident of that country to bet on that. The problem with that is sometimes somebody's got inside information, and that's where you're probably not going to get those books. But as far as who'd be the quarterback, or in fact before this season, you could bet on who would start for the Saints game one, Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. So the short answer is yes, you will get bets like that in the summertime. All right, we appreciate everybody joining us for Sports Betting 101. Just a couple of reminders. You can download the mobile app. You can't play on your mobile app just yet, but it's a good practice tool. You can download it. You can deposit. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars. You can get that $100 bonus. Also, check out bet.NOLA.com all year long for our best sports betting